So everyone here is a creator? I need my translator. Hi. Sure, why not?
We got a professional translator in the back.
We have a professional translator. Okay, so they're going to translate. Okay. Is everyone here a creator? Are you all making 360 now already? Or is it something that you want to do?
Yes, I am.
You are? What kind of camera do you use? Insta360?
Yeah.
The one or the pro or which one?
One.
The one, the small one.
A small one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? What do you have, sir?
740. 740.
Okay, cool. Yes. What do you have?
有两台 Ozo， 有两台 Insta
Okay, so
Pro。
we're gonna have to translate that one.
He has 2 Ozos.
Very good.
Ozo 组完了以后 Insta Pro。
I'm so sorry for you. Your investment just went down to 0. But it's a great, but it's a great camera. It really is. Everybody else, how about over here? What kind of camera do you have? It's a very nice looking camera. I've seen pictures of this one, but I haven't seen it yet.
Except for that one, that's all they have.
Oh, except for that one. I misunderstood. Except for that one, you have all the cameras. When you say all the cameras, you have the views? Okay. That's good. I'm glad. I'm really interested in finding out what you guys are doing. What kind of videos are you doing? Are you doing professional? Are you doing for yourself? What kind of videos are you doing right now?
My family.
For your family, so more personal. How about you?
应该算是专业的。
He's doing it professionally.
Very good. Corporate
For
or
business.
so corporate stuff. That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. It's nice to see people actually making money doing this because at first, if you've been in this for a while, you know that it's a hard road. I'm an American who's been living in Asia for 17 years. So my wife tells me I'm Asian by heart, if not by birth. My cameras, I've been doing this for about 5 years. I actually got into it very early on, and I helped start the beta program for the GoPro Omni, which was the first true professional 360 camera. Before that, we had what I like to call clap and pray. You start the cameras, you hope all of them are starting at the same time, and then you try and adjust it if you can get lucky. And I've been very fortunate to work with GoPro on the development of the Fusion as well, which is a fantastic camera. But now, we not only have 2D and 3D 360, now we have a new entry, 180 VR. This is the Zcam K1 Pro, and it's using a bigger sensor. It's a micro 4/3 sensor, and this is a 3.5mm lens on it. And I got to tell you, the image is beautiful. You can shoot in Z-Log, and you get some beautiful, beautiful images. I'd be glad to show you guys some. I've got my Oculus Go with me, and I can show you some images. I decided to put together a little presentation, and this is I did this on the VeeR experience, because I think it's a fantastic platform. Are you guys all on the VeeR platform? Do you have your stuff up on VeeR? Yours? Do you post it on VeeR?
Yeah.
Very good. How about yours?
我们用自己的平台。
They have their own platform, actually.
They have their own platform.
Yes.
This is because it's a business. Yes?
是因为你们是一个公司。
对，我们做的东西好多是自己研发的软件平台，自己在内部去使用，不会上传公众的。
So they actually have their own, they develop internally their software platform, so they upload their content to their own platform.
Very
They
good.
don't share it outside yet.
So you're a competitor of you. Oh.
是竞争对手吗？
No, they're not actually, so.
How about over here? Are you guys using VeeR to load your platform? Load your 360 videos?
They are also, they have their own platform.
Wow, there's a lot of that. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. And I don't think we're seeing as much of that in America as we are over here.
Very entrepreneurial in China
I like
here.
that. I think that's fantastic. So what I did was I put together from some of the different shoots that I've done over the last 5 years for 360. Before that, just to give you a little background on me, I've been in the business for 38 years. I started out in film, went into digital as it came along. I've been doing 3D for almost 20 years. In fact, in China, I did 24 3D films for TV, videos, and basically it sold very well here in China, so you might have seen some of it on when 3D was popular. So this is, you can start at any one of these. This is in Delhi, and we were using the Omni. So you can look around Old Delhi, and then you can click over to the next, you can go back and click over to the next image and just kind of look around. So one of the things that I do is I do more documentary storytelling, which is much, much different than what you is working on. With Hollywood films, you've got a big crew, you've got a bigger budget, and you really go to town. For me, usually it's me and my wife. So I don't know how that compares to what you guys do, but we've done some very interesting things in Asia, in India, some in China, some in Myanmar. So I've been able to be very lucky to be able to travel all around Asia. And like I said, I've lived here for 17 years. I'm based in Bangkok. The main thing is you've got a very big variety of cameras here, but it really depends on the job as to what is going to work best for you. Right now, for the most part, 2D 360, that's the most popular thing out there, because you don't have enough people with headsets to really take advantage of the 3D. So that becomes what I like to call a premium experience. So if you're shooting 180 VR and you put it up on Facebook, well, in China not Facebook, but if you put it up on VeeR and take a look at it, you're going to get a 2D image. You're not going to see the 3D. But if you put it into the headset, then you're going to get a really dynamic experience where it's reaching out to you. So for the most part, the two cameras that I use the most are my Omni, which shoots 8K, and the Fusion. With a little bit of help, the Fusion normally shoots 5.2K, but the image sensor is actually much bigger than you think it is, and you actually, by using command line interface, you can actually output 6K. And I was able to get this approved for use on Discovery VR. So this camera it's a professional camera, but it's also a very popular consumer camera. And one of the great things about this camera is you don't have the restrictions that you was also talking about, because he's shooting with 3D 360, and then you do have to worry about how close you get. You have something called parallax when you're working with 3D, which is the physical distance between the right and left eye lenses. Now in this case, this camera is set up what we call natural 3D, so it's about a 64 millimeter separation between the eyes. With this camera, you don't have that problem. I can get this close to this on the scene, and it will still stitch together. And it does a beautiful job of it. So it's a matter of choosing the right camera for the job. There are times when 3D 360 is the best way to go, and there are times when 2D 360, which gives you a lot more flexibility, is better. So it really depends on what you're doing. Now you're using the one you were using, is yours a 3D or a 2D? Your 360 camera?
那是2.3
3D.
Oh, sorry,
3D.
3D.
Yeah.
Okay, and yours is, you have both? Okay.
Yes.
Well, of course, with 3D 360 cameras, you could, of course, use the 2D version of the format anyway, so it doesn't matter. For instance, with the Views, this is the Views Plus, by the way. This one just came out this year, and I've been experimenting with it. It's the downside to it is that it's only a 4K output. I would love to see it be at least 6K or 8K, but perhaps with the next one, that's what'll happen. But the lensing has gotten much better, and the nicest thing is the ability to do live stream. I just did a live stream with this morning, and it does a wonderful job. The new software that they came out with is much, much better. But now, let's get back to a little bit, well, okay. Bring up the Penty swimwear one. This was a behind-the-scenes shoot of a catalog shoot for, so if you keep turning. So Now look up. So here's the photographer. And we wanted to give everybody the feeling of being there. And here we are out on an island in Thailand, and you want to, okay, go ahead and click to the next slide. You want to give people the feeling of being in the middle of the shoot. Well, first of all, I don't know of too many 3D 360 cameras that are natively waterproof. If you're going to use them in water, you're going to have to put them into some kind of housing. But that's the nice thing about the Fusion. The Fusion is waterproof up to 6 meters. That doesn't mean that you can take it underwater to shoot. You do need another housing because optically, the optics completely change when you get out underwater because of the diffraction in the water. Did we lose it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, what was great about the Fusion was to, we can go to Penti and then skip through the first one and go to the next one. I was able to stick it on the monopod in the water and then get out of the shot because, as I always tell everybody when I go on a shoot, if you can see the camera can see you. Oh, we lost it. Okay. The idea there is that we were able to stick the camera in the water. Occasionally the waves would come along and wash it and knock it down into the water and go under. And I didn't have to worry about it. So I have 5 Fusions because it's just the perfect camera and you can put it in multiple locations and shoot. There we go. So here I got, and it was great. You see if there's actually a Fusion sitting here and I had another one back here. So I was shooting with 3 of them on this day to get in different positions. And it really gives you a good feeling of being in the shoot, being there and being part of it. In fact, it's very funny. I don't know if you guys have done this, but when you're out and you set up the camera, you walk away from it. Well, I had one girl that was in the crew on this that walked over and put her arm like this on the camera while it was recording. Because she didn't realize it was recording. What I do with it is I turn off the lights and I turn off the light on the LCD so that I'm more inconspicuous. Nobody can tell that I'm actually recording something. Okay, so let's go a little bit more about storytelling. Now, when you're doing documentary, you have an idea, you have an outline, you have a story concept, but you don't have a script because that's not what documentaries are all about. So you've got to be able to try and catch the moment. And that can be a little bit more challenging, and also it means that a lot of times you're going to be involved in the shoot. Could you let's quickly go through those, and if you could get to the UNICEF. If you can, it's the last one in there. This is a very unique project that I've been working on for a little over a year now. It started with somebody from UNICEF from Upshift Vietnam, which Upshift is a program for disadvantaged and disabled kids, and it gives them a way to go ahead and empower and try and make positive changes in their community. And they approached me and said, they put out a general call asking for entrepreneurs to teach these kids skills to try and get them break the cycle of poverty that they're in. And I came up with the idea why not teach them how to go ahead and do 360 storytelling? And like I said, it took a year to get it to fruition, and then we finally went to Vietnam and taught the kids, and then we created 3 teams of kids to let them shoot their own story. This was the really big challenge because we had very limited amount of time to teach them. But to show you kind of how things are, everybody had a phone. Everybody had been taking videos with their phone, so they really had some idea already about how to do storytelling. So they weren't completely new to the whole thing. Go to the next one. So this is it. Actually, at the end of the shoot, we were doing a school scene. And this was kind of a combination of doing a documentary, and the kids created 3 videos. Each team created their own video, and it was more of a story. So one kid talked about how his grandfather had lost his arm fighting the Americans and the French in the wars in Vietnam, and he wanted to build him a prosthetic arm that was controlled by brainwaves. Quite a task, and he pulled it off. The only problem was that his grandfather got so used to being without an arm that when he tried to use the arm, it was clumsy for him. And so they wound up repurposing the arm to fit it onto teenagers and young people who had lost limbs. So it's a very interesting story. As you can see, this boy is extremely disabled. Go ahead and spin around a little bit. You'll see some of the other participants. Whoops, we lost it. Some of the participants in the group. Another story that we told was about a blind girl and her friend. This is actually, which group is this? That's actually the boy whose grandfather lost his arm. So he was kind of like the main leader of that group. The other one was about these kids built an inexpensive blind book reader, because Braille books are very expensive and there's not a lot of them around. And so his friend he was talking to her about this new book that he read, and she's blind, and she's like, well, I can't read stuff like that because there isn't any, they don't make that many Braille books. So these kids came up with this book reader that was able to go ahead and basically verbally talk the stories to the blind people so they could have exposure to almost any story or any book or magazine that they want to. It's pretty amazing stuff. And then this is Tuan, and Tuan is extremely disabled. Can you move down on him? You'll see I attached this to his wheelchair, and he's got an electronic wheelchair, and his story was centered around him trying to find meaningful work. And you have to understand, you guys have a lot of bicycles here and a fair amount of motorcycles. In Saigon, there are more motorcycles than there are cars. And it's just horrendous traffic. And watching him cross the street in that electric wheelchair was absolutely one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. But he told the story of how he reenacted how he went to a lot of places. Some places, they wouldn't even let him in the door because they had no wheelchair access. And how he finally wound up getting with a group that was actually disabled friendly, and he's now doing coding. So it's very, very uplifting stories from all three groups. And then we did two more, one about behind the scenes of putting this all together. And the fifth one we're still working on right now with UNICEF, which is a UNICEF-based story around these groups of kids and what Upshift is trying to accomplish in Vietnam. So for me, this was a matter of myself and my wife and one Vietnamese interpreter. And that was the whole staff. I did all the editing, working with Premiere, and some with AVP, AutoPanel Video, and AutoPanel Giga. So, very different way of being able to tell stories. Definitely all about, same as Hollywood as far as that goes, with natural lighting, because you really don't have much choice unless you can kind of camouflage the light into your scene. Otherwise, the other way to do it is to put in the lighting fixture and then shoot what we call a clean plate, to where you can actually take the light out, but yet you have to leave the glow, and the glow, you have to make it to where it's coming from somewhere. So you might put it, for instance, close to a window so that it's simulating the light that's coming out the window. There are some tricks to go with it yet, but 360 is still such a new format that we're the guys, you, Jonathan, we're the guys that are out there that are finding new ways to do things and finding new techniques and helping to work with new cameras when they come out. How are we doing on time?
We'll probably have to wrap it up soon, and then we can go into the Q&A session.
Let's open up for Q&A. Do you guys have some questions? I'd love talk. I like making these things more about conversations than about just talking at you.
More people will have questions for you.
Yes.
Here.
Hopefully. Yes.
I was a documentary filmmaker, and now I'm working for a documentary film festival. And I would like to ask, can you show us a clip of the VeeR documentary? I'm really interested.
I can't release it yet, but I would love to get your information because maybe we could do something. Actually, we're actually, because it's 5, it's kind of a challenge because you have 5 films. You have a behind the scenes, you have 1 film from each one of the groups, and then you have 1 overall film. So we're trying to figure out how do we approach this from a film festival perspective. One of the things that I came up with last night, I hope I can say this, VeeR Experience
Yes.
has just added video. When I did it, it was only stills. Now they're adding video. So I see VeeR Experience as a perfect tool for this type of subject matter, because you could go to a main page, and from there you could explore stills or you can explore any one of the 5 videos at your leisure. So I would love to talk to you about putting that in with your film festival, and we can figure out some way to do that.
Yeah,
So when I get done, I'll get your information.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. And also I have another question
Sure.
about the film art. Do you think VR gonna bring a new revolution to filmmaking? I mean, not like 3D, because like in our eyes, 3D is just like tool for you to watch. Because as Hui said, is totally bring a new perspective and where you place the camera, and like there are lots of interesting issues to talk about the VR. Do you think any feature of VR gonna give a new life?
I think that's it's an interesting question, but I think we've been trying to tell stories since the first caveman etched something on the wall in his cave. Okay, we've been trying to create visualizations to talk about our memories, talk about things that we see, to tell stories. So is VR a revolution? In some ways, yes, but in some ways, it's just a variation on a theme. It's basically, we're still using digital video to tell a story. But just like changing from film to digital or from black and white to color, we've created a new medium, but yet it's still based off of all the original concepts. Yes, we have to use the cameras differently. We have to do our positioning differently. We have to coach our actors differently. So yes, it is. I think it's going to take over. No, it's going to be a niche. How big of a niche? That's yet to be determined. I think a lot of it has to do with how fast it gets adapted by the general public. How many people have headsets? Or how comfortable are headsets? I think the Oculus Go that has been a big game changer. But in some ways, it's just a stepping stone. Is it a perfect headset? No. Is it better than everything else that's come before it? Yeah. But then again, that's how things go. The next camera that comes out is better than the other cameras that came before because they've learned from that. And we as filmmakers, it's kind of the same thing. As we do something, maybe I'll watch one of Yu's films and I'll say, ooh, I have an idea. Maybe, what if we did this? For the behind the scenes one that I did, which I think I do have that one with me and I can show you that one. What we did was, it was a talk between Brian Cotter, who was with UNICEF, and myself. And we're in the office. And that's kind of boring for 360, because, what do? Do you put your actors at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock? And you're playing what we call video ping pong? As one person talks, you look this way. So the other person, it's like, okay, that's a gimmick, and it's silly. Or do you keep them right next to each other, kind of like at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock? And then on the other side, what I did was I superimposed video from the kids putting together their stories. So as you turned, you were seeing things that we were talking about. So it was kind of like the idea, it's similar to the idea of doing picture-in-picture, but yet with a twist. So, I don't know, maybe that was kind of a long way to answer the question, but yeah, it's changing things. Is it going to revolutionize things? Yeah, to some extent. Is it going to last? I hope so. I think so at this point. I think it's on good footing.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi. You mentioned that you use the fusion camera underwater. Have you ever encountered a stitching problem?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
In fact, when I do use it underwater, I have what kind of looks like an upside down fishbowl. And it seals at the bottom. And so it's about this big around. I can show you some pictures of it. I have it on my phone. It's about this big around, and it's a clear acrylic. Which, being acrylic, you do have to be careful because it does scratch easily. But then you don't have the stitching problem. It looks absolutely perfect underwater. And I've seen a gentleman, I was just in Tokyo about a month ago for the International Virtual Reality Photographers Association, and he has some just absolutely spectacular underwater footage, but he's not able to share it publicly because it was shot for a client. But so yes, it will not stitch if you just put it underwater like this. But what I was talking about is the fact that I could sit it in the water, sticking out of the water, and not worry about it falling down. I didn't have to worry about it getting wet. All I had to do was wipe off the lens and keep shooting.
I just means the if I put the
If you put it in just like this, yes,
under the water,
it will not stitch.
yeah,
It will not.
The light through the water and the lens.
Yes, it diffracts.
Because the reflection
Mhm.
and the view angle will become narrow.
Yes, and so it will work. But if you use this underwater housing, then it will work.
Some
Is it not
condition
translating good?
您可以用中文讲，我给你翻译。
就是有的时候吧，那个它两个镜头那个视场角变小之后，它就没办法拼接到。
Tell him I can show him a picture of the housing.
这个问题它是如何处
两个
理？
是镜头。
就镜头的那个视场角变小
就是
之后，
空气中的这个密度和水中的密度是不一样的，会导致它镜头的这个角度会有所变。比如说它原来的是210的镜头，它实际是有重叠的，但是比如说到水里，它的密度变了，它的镜头可能从210变成180，或者是不到180。那不到180的情况下，它在拼接的过程中，它就会出现这个缝儿，会有。
Okay,
Yes.
let's see if I understood it correctly. So I'm
Okay.
not a professional as these guys, but let me translate. So basically, they're saying the air density and the water density
Yes.
is different.
That's
and therefore,
absolutely correct.
when you're shooting there, then there is a certain angle where the image is stitched. For example, the 210 angles or something like that. Then
Right.
that will form a specific kind of gap, right? That you have to stitch in it one way. But if you're underwater,
That's why
then
you.
it becomes a different angle,
Yes.
right?
The
It doesn't. The gap will be different.
Yes, the
Right,
light
and then what would you
refraction
do about it?
causes it to change.
Yes.
I'm trying to find an image for them to show them, okay, here is the solution.
等一下空气的解决方法，下一次。
So by using that, you can shoot underwater and get a perfect stitch.
Right. So apparently, these guys think it's a good idea. So you guys definitely steal his camera and check it out. So
I can give
he's
you some information
wrapped
about where
around
you can get that.
like a globe. Right. You kind of wrap. Okay.
It's like an upside down fish bowl. Like a goldfish bowl.
Yeah.
Upside down.
I was speaking English to them, so I was confused.
Okay.
就是它其实是用一个玻璃杯子、一个气球把那个给罩住了，然后里面可能放一些氧气还是怎么是吧？但是他们看懂了，所以大家之后有什么问题，他这个 special 的这个做法可以问这个团队或者再问 Al。
More questions. I love talking to you guys. I love it that you have questions.
Here we go.
Sorry，我英文渣哈。我说中文，我有两个就是具体的一个问题。刚才继续刚才手下的一个问题。
I agree 100%.
Sorry。
I translate, don't worry.
我前段时间的时候拍了一个就是潜水训练的一个片子，然后中间的话它会出现一个情况，就是不是长久的在水上或者其实下，它是在不断的潜伏上浮或者下沉这样子。那么它这个怎么样切换？
你是说你的 camera，你会想让它上和下去？
它的镜头是捆在那个氧气罐上。
哦。
所以它不断的是。
I have to wait. So, okay, yes.
Okay, so he still want to continue the conversation of the underwater topic. So some time ago, they were doing an underwater shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody was carrying the camera is actually strapped along like a oxygen tank.
Oh, yeah.
So the person who's shooting has to go up and down, and therefore he's wondering how do you adjust the angle?
You wouldn't.
How do you rent? Oh yes, so the person, when he's strapped with the camera, then he has to go up into the air and then go down deeper into the water. And how does he do the transitioning if he has to go up and down all the time?
It's very difficult. With that housing, it has so much air volume inside that you need 7.5 kilo of weight to go ahead and pull it down. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to even pull it under the water because you have to overcome the volume of air on the inside. So what we did was basically I used you could use diving belt weights, or you could use like a dumbbell, and just simply strap it to the bottom, and then the diver would be holding it in his hand. I don't know how I would do it about putting it onto the back, because then you're going to have a lot more movement, whereas with your hand it's more controllable.
Right.
So I don't think I would try to do it that way. I would try and change how you're shooting it.
您说我翻译他的吗？
它是有两个机位，一个是在腿儿，一个是在腿儿，一个是在一块儿。所以它从不同的机位
对，我先翻译，他说的已经翻译了是吧？听懂了是吧？因为他刚才其实没有解释您这个问题。对，他说您的那个问题他解释不了，但是他在解释他之前的他的那个做法，那个7招那个做法，那个他在解释那个事情。所以您想把您的这个问题再问一下。Okay, so he still wants to drill into his particular problem,
Right.
which is he has the tank has 2 cameras.
Right.
One is strapped to the front, to the
To the
top
head.
of the head, and another one is in the bottom.
What's the camera?
是
What
一
camera
个
are you
相
using?
机。One fusion, one is one.
Okay. 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 The one has a much smaller underwater housing. It's more like a test tube that goes over it, and I think that would be possibly easier to work with. With the fusion, I think you would have difficulty having it attached to somebody's head because of the weight problem. Because in order to use this type of housing, like I said, you need 7.5 kilos. That's going to make it difficult for the diver because his head is going to have a lot more weight attached to it in order for him to be able to get underwater. Again, I would shoot it differently, and I would have the diver with the fusion holding it. And then basically you're going to just, it's going to pretty much make his hand invisible. But that would be, in fact, the Japanese gentleman that did the underwater that came out so beautifully that I saw in Tokyo, he did it that way. He had it attached, and he had diving belt weights attached to the strap, and he was holding it. And it did fantastic. So, yeah, I understand where you're maybe trying to go, where you're trying to get a POV off the diver. Then maybe the Insta361 is better on his head, and maybe the fusion on the tank, because then you have the weight of the tanks. That might work better.
释放双手。对。So what he actually wants to know is, so he first understood, I think he understands your particular solution for the camera thing is probably not suitable for his situation.
Yeah.
And his situation is very particular. He wants to show the trainers underwater
Right.
and first person point of view and with their hands free. So they can show
Sure.
them roaming around with
Sure.
their hands and doing stuff.
Again,
so
I would
he's
put
wondering,
the-
do you have any ideas?
I would put the Insta361 on the head, because that's like the cover, the underwater for that is more like a test tube.
Okay.
So it's smaller. Okay? So you don't need it doesn't have the volume of air, so you don't have to have so much weight. If you then use the fusion on the back of the tanks for that view, then you have the weight of the tanks, and that will negate the air volume, and you should be able to go under without any problem. And our time is up because we have other discussions. I'd love, what we can do is, if you want to, we can talk about it after.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Al. I think
Thank
time
you,
is up for
guys.
this Q&A
Thank
session.
you so much. And thank you so much.